Shalom Israel. My name is Ives and Jude Israel. I'm a part of Strong Tower Israelite School. And today I'm going to be doing a part two of the part one I did of the Feast of Purim. And those who may not know the importance of the Feast of Purim. I hope everybody's having a good Feast of Purim. Hope everybody's being merry, having a good time, rejoicing in the Lord like we should be. And remembering the importance of the Feast of Purim and why it's important for it to be kept. So let's do a recap of part one. Part one, you have King Ahasuerus, king of the Mede and Persian Empire, who basically have many provinces. And he's throwing a feast for his nobles and his princes and his servants throughout all his provinces. 180-day feast. So the king, being merry, and rejoicing, he said he wants to show off his queen, Vashti. So he basically sends for Vashti and basically show off her beauty to his nobles and his princes and the people who sit before him, honorable men. So Queen Vashti, she refused the king's request. So being that she refused the queen's request, it heated King Ahasuerus was heated, because he was just trying to show off her beauty. Now you have the men that are in King Ahasuerus' circle. They're angry also because they're saying not only does that look bad on the king's behalf, but also look bad on them and the men in the provinces and their wives. So they basically make a request to the king that they seek for a fair virgin, among the provinces, that she should come before the king, and if the king delight in her, she shall replace Queen Vashti. So now let's jump to chapter 2. Well, I'm just going to be jumping either way. Let's just jump. I'm giving y'all a recap. So now you have Mordecai, who's being mentioned, a Benjamite. So Mordecai, who basically he had took on the role as a father to Hadassah, whose name is Esther. She was one of the women that was called as a request for the king to basically be chosen among the women. Being that she was called, she was basically shown favor amongst all the women. So basically, the king delighted in Hadassah, which is Esther, and he made her queen instead. Let's jump. Okay, now we have Hiram. Hiram was basically advanced by King Ahasuerus due to his honor. So you got Hiram, who's basically the king's right-hand man, who basically, go in and out before King Ahasuerus. He's basically advanced. So it being Hiram, who basically looking to be honored, he basically requests that everyone that's in the presence of Hiram, they should bow before him and give him honor. So Mordecai, being a Jew, he refused to bow before Hiram. It heated Hiram, and Hiram basically sought out the lineage of Mordecai. And said he understood. Well, he basically brought it before King Ahasuerus and basically spoke about that there's a certain people among your people in your provinces that don't adhere to your laws. They keep their own laws, which were the Jews. So Hiram, he made a request to the king that he should go forth and basically destroy all the Jews. And they basically were based on the fact that Mordecai didn't bow before him. So that would basically start the whole thing. Okay. So King Ahasuerus, he grants Hiram request. So this thing spread forth throughout the provinces, and now you have the Jews in an uproar. Okay, knowing what would happen, we got word back to Mordecai, and Mordecai basically went and sent and informed Esther. Esther, who's basically the queen now that sits in Vashti's seat, she basically went for Mordecai to inquire what was going on. So Mordecai told her what was going on. And he basically was telling her, look, you got to look out for your people. Even though she was fearful for her life because she haven't been called in to the King Ahasuerus yet, because in order for her to go in, she had to be called. And the golden scepter had to be pulled out before her to grant her to come in before King Ahasuerus. Okay, y'all. That was a lot. Okay, so we're going to jump right back into the chapter. I think I'm in chapter 5 of the book of Esther. I think I'm in chapter 5. Let's see. No, I'm in chapter 6 of Esther. So let's start at the book. Let's start at Esther chapter 6, verse 1. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh. Yeah, I forgot to recap on that too, but it's gonna get told. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. Verse 3, and the king said, what honor and dignity have been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that minister unto him, there is nothing done for him. And the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was coming to the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than myself? So Haman, being that he sit on the right hand of the king, he thought it was no one more honorable than him. So the king was going to delight to honor him anyway. So that's the mindset that he had. Verse 7, and Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighted to honor, let the royal apparel be brought which the king uses to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princesses, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. So Hiram is saying all these things that shall be done to the man who the king delighted to honor. So Hiram is the one who basically giving the honor to the man that the king delighted to honor. That's what he's saying. Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse, and as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. So you got to think about it. In the previous part, you had Mordecai, basically when he was on his way to the banquet to come in before King Ahasuerus, he seen Mordecai, and Mordecai was sitting behind the gate. So King Hiram is like, this man still ain't honoring me in my presence. So basically the gallows was brought up. He brought it before his wife, and his friends suggested that he hang Mordecai on the gallows. So now in this part, that the king, he basically had a bad dream, and he basically, not a bad dream, he couldn't sleep. The king couldn't sleep. So he basically commanded that the chronicles be brought to him. And Mordecai came up. So as I was reading, now you finna see how this role is finna be completely switched in this chapter. Verse 10, then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. So Haman, he probably like, man, what in the world is going on? I was just finna come to you and ask for this man to be hung on the gallows. Now you mean to tell me you finna honor him? So verse 12, and Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house mourning and having his head covered. And Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. So everything is happening so fast to Haman, man. It's like everything is basically befalling him at a very fast pace. Chapter 7. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. Verse 3, then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. So Haman, like, he's standing in the presence of both of them. So Esther is giving her basically her request. And Haman's like, he already know what's finna go down. And the king, verse 7, and the king arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen. For he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Hold on, let's read it again. Verse 7, and the king arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. So you got Haman now, he's begging Queen Esther, please, like, please, I didn't mean, he begging. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine. And Haman was falling upon the bed whereon Esther was. And Haman was falling upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. So you got Haman bowing. You got Haman basically begging for his life, and he's bowing down on the bed of Esther. And King Ahasuerus, he looking at her like, okay, he gonna force her now. He doing all this now. He finna force her before my face. Like basically, he finna disrespect me in front of the queen. He finna take her before I do, even though he already have her. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold, also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, stand up in his house, stand up in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So you got to understand, like, this King Ahasuerus was not playing. You mean to tell me, like, okay, you going to bow down before the queen, you bow down before the queen before her bed, and I see this. And you mean to tell me the man who I delight to honor, you have made gallows for him to be hanged on? No, bro. The king told him, like, no, hang Haman on the gallows. That's the whole switch of the whole story. That shows how the Most High would look out for his people. But let's keep reading. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. That pacified the king. Chapter 8. On that day did the king Ahasuerus, did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman the Jews' enemy unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. So now Esther, she's basically giving her lineage unto King Ahasuerus. So she made known who her heritage was and the things that she basically believed. She made everything known to the king. Now Mordecai is being brought before King Ahasuerus. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king. Verse 5. And said, if it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people, or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and Haman have they hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Verse 8. Write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and to the deputies, and rulers of the provinces which are from India, unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces. So there's a lot of provinces, man. That means like there was going to be a lot of Jews being put to death if this thing would have went forward what Haman had basically brought forth. Let's read verse 9 again. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and the deputies, and the rulers of the provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people afterward their language, and to the Jews according to their writing, and according to their language. And he wrote in the king's Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together. So the king, listen what's going to go down. Wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together. He telling the Jews, gather yourselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. You got to think about it. You know, you got the other people, the heathen in these provinces, they prepared to kill the Jews. Now you finna have these letters go back out to the provinces, and it basically finna be reversed. So you finna have those people who are ready to kill the Jews, they finna be shocked. Verse 12. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province, which was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the post that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white. So you know Mordecai, he dappered down now. You know, he ain't sitting outside the king's gate no more. He in the presence of the king. He dappered down. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. Verse 16, the Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whatsoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. So you had a lot of converts. Chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, that is the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had ruled over them that hated them. The Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And all the rulers of the provinces, and the lieutenants, and the deputies, and officers of the king, helped the Jews, because of the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. So you got all the deputies of the king, you know, in different provinces who was basically going to partake. They was going to partake in the destruction of the Jews also. But being that it switched, and now they basically fearing Mordecai, they finna help the Jews kill all the people who was going to kill them. Verse 4. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And at Shushan the palace the Jews slew in Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. And Parshandatha, and Dalphon, and Aspatha, and Paratha, and Poratha, and Adalia, and Aridatha, and Paramashta, and Arasai, and Aradai, and Vajesatha, the 10 sons of Haman, the sons of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they. So they not only killed the people who was going to kill, the Jews, they killed Haman's sons also. They slew they, but on the spoil laid they not their hand. Verse 11, on that day the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy he said, now what is thy petition? So the king, he telling Esther, like, look, these amount of men have been destroyed in the provinces. What is your petition again? So he had a lot of favor in Esther, man. He said, like, look, whatever you want, okay, let it be done. What do you want now? I kept the promise of your first petition. Now what do you want now? Now what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. Or what is thy request further? And it shall be done. Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow, also according unto this day. Let's read it again. Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow, also according to this day's decree. And let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. So, Esther, she wanted the thing to be done again for another day. She was like, look, if it happens today, let it be done today. But this time, let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan, but on the prey they laid not their hand. Verse 16, but the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together and stood for their lives and had rest from their enemies and slew of their foes 75,000. 75,000 people got slew in those provinces. That's a lot of people. But they laid not their hands on the prey. On the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested day, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. So this is finna tie into the Purim. This is finna tie into the feast of Purim. So it said, on the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested day, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Verse 18. But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day thereof, and on the 15th day of the same day rested, and made a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. So it's nothing wrong with giving gifts and giving portions to one another on the feast of Purim. We can give things away. There's nothing wrong with that. And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, but both nigh and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar, and the 15th day of the same yearly, as the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions, one to another, and gifts to the poor. And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. I told you I remember the word pur because that was going basically that's how you get the root of Purim, to cast lot. That is the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, verse 25. Verse 25. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they call these days Purim, after the name of Pur, like I said. Therefore for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them, the Jews ordained, and took upon them, and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing, and according to the appointed time every year. You're going to keep this every year. And these days shall be remembered and kept throughout every generation. Not just that generation, every generation. No matter if you scattered abroad. That was in the captivity right here. So there's no excuse that you can't keep the commandments in your captivity. When you saying that Mordecai and Esther was in the captivity of the Medes and Persians, and they ordained this feast in their captivity. So this got to be done throughout every generation. No matter what captivity you in. Even if you in Jerusalem, you want to, if you still one of those that reside in Jerusalem, reside anywhere in the east, mid east, anywhere across the world where the Lord has scattered us, you keep the feast of Purim because it's supposed to be passed down from generation to generation. Let's read verse 28 again. And that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. Verse 29. Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. And he sent the letters unto all the Jews, to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus, with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed the matters of the fastings and their cry. They gave them the reasons why they keep the days and the importance of the days. To remember their sorrows in the time their sorrows will turn to joy. We got the history on that now. Verse 32. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. And it was written in the book. You're reading the book now, the book of Esther. That's another thing, man. You got a lot of people who don't believe in these scriptures. They say like random people wrote scriptures. It don't work like that. You just heard here first that Esther, she the one that wrote the Feast of Purim. She put it in the book. Or however, Mordecai, he wrote portions. It don't matter. You have the book right here. It's mentioned in the book in this verse right here. So you have the book of Esther in your face, telling you about the Feast of Purim. So it's scriptural, And the decree of Esther, verse 32, and the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. Chapter 10, verse 1. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, and all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai, whereunto the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of the Media and Persia? We got to find that book, y'all. We don't really need it, but it's good to have that history to basically see how Mordecai reigned and all his acts. Verse 3. And Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Ahasuerus. Was he next? What that mean? Was he next? We don't have that history. Did Mordecai reign next? We don't know. For Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. Okay, Israel. So now we have the history of the Feast of Purim, and to show how our people who are in roles of power, they basically can be in those roles of power to basically look out for the betterment of our people. There's nothing wrong with looking out for the betterment of our people if you hold high positions of power in that captivity and this captivity also. So there'll be a good book in history for our people who may not read the book of Esther to learn from it, and to adopt it to their life. Not only read this book by yourself, but man, pass it along, man. You got Israel who's still lost out here, who basically don't see royalty, see our heritage in the Bible. Like I said before, we got a lot of history and a lot of heritage and a lot of royalty, not only in our kingdom as we was in Israel when we had our heritage, but also in a lot of the other kingdoms, other heathens' kingdoms. We had royalty in their kingdoms also because the Lord gave us favor in those kings' sight. It also happened with Joseph, when he was in Egypt. He had basically power in Egypt, A lot of our people don't know that history. So you have, again, the same example is being set in the kingdom of the Medes and Persia for Esther, So, yeah, man, I hope y'all enjoyed this class. Like I told you, I was going to come back with part 2. I hope y'all got some type of edification from this class. If y'all have any questions, y'all can basically comment. If you have any questions on how to join our congregation, reach out to us, man. We got Facebook. We got Strong Tower. Our Facebook is Strong Tower. We also have a Twitter, which is Strong Tower Israelite School. If y'all have any questions, reach out to us, man. I hope y'all enjoyed this class. I hope y'all Feast of Purim is going well. I hope y'all rejoicing, being merry. Drink your little wine. Have your little dance, Listen to some Hebrew Israelite music, man. Enjoy your feast, man. This is our heritage. This is our feast. You got the history right here in the book of Esther. Pass it along from generation to generation. Keep it in remembrance of your children, and keep the heritage alive, keep our heritage alive, man, because a lot of our people don't know that. So with that, I'm gonna say shalom. Hope y'all enjoyed the class, got edified. Shalom.